Hello everybody and welcome back! I am the Pumpkin King, and today we're going to be doing a fun little trip into a new game that I've been very excited about, Prehistoric Kingdom. Now we will of course be continuing with Pure Imagination on this channel as well, but because this game just came out last week, I have been throwing myself into it with a will, and I have been very happy with some of the results. So we're going to be going through my park as it stands right now, and I'll be talking about my first impressions about the game in today's episode. I've really been enjoying the level of customization possible in this game. I can change the colors on it, I can change the designs on it. It's just incredible the amount of detail that I can change, and I can change the interiors too if I want. So for this part, which I'm calling Eons, I've divided the path into three main segments. There's one that leads to the Paleozoic, one that leads to the Mesozoic, and one that leads to the Cenozoic era. Thus far, I've completed the Cenozoic and the Cretaceous, and I'll be building the Jurassic in just a little bit. But I wanted to make a progress report before the end of the week from our first week of Prehistoric Kingdom, and let everyone know about my feelings about the game. Coming on up to the top of the hill, over to our right is the first enclosure I made. This is for the woolly mammoth and woolly rhino. Now, one of the things I've been doing for this game is I wanted all of the enclosures to be themed based off of national parks near the area where the fossils of the animals have been found. So in this case, the mammoths and woolly rhinos are in an enclosure themed for Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming. And you can see I have the geysers and stuff there, and it's really cool to be able to work with some of these special water effects, and something I really missed in Jurassic World Evolution. Over here on our left is the sort of ski lodge area that I made. It was my first attempt building with the modular system for this game. It does take some getting used to, particularly after Planet Zoo and Planet Coaster, because it's not really polished the way that theirs is, and the grid system does make it difficult. That said, the roofing system, so much better. Such an improvement. Heading down the hill, we have a floating pole. Like I said, the game is in early access right now. It does have a lot of bugs. Like sometimes the animals will just randomly teleport out of their enclosures. Guests, as I mentioned, can't make it past the main gate. And yesterday I came back and found most of the trees just hovering in midair. So clearly it still needs some work, but it's been really good so far, and I'm really enjoying playing it. So this is our Smilodon enclosure, the third animal of the Cenozoic era. This is based off of the Sierra Nevadas National Forest in California. And these Smilodon are actually the grassland ones, which would have been appropriate to that area based on the findings in the Brea tar pit. Continuing down this path, you can see to the left and right, I've been playing around with the terrain tools, and I've really been enjoying the terraining in this game because it allows me to use multiple different terrain paint that you can't have access to in things like Planet Zoo and Planet Coaster. I have access to all of the terrain paints regardless of the animals that I am putting in the enclosure, which means that I can effectively Bob Ross a little enclosure like this. And by mixing in some smaller vegetation up on the mountain slopes and larger ones closer to the viewer, I can make the enclosure seem much bigger than they actually are. So the scale of all of these is really great. Those were Pachyrhinosaurus, by the way, and I themed it to look like the Banff National Forest in Alberta, near where the Pachyrhinosaurus skeletons were discovered. Heading down the bamboo alley here over on our left, we're coming into the Asian section now. There are two Asian dinosaurs currently. Well, 3 if you count Piscosaurus, but that's a separate thing. So we're coming into the Gobi Desert and to the Khan-Kati National Forest in northern Mongolia for the Dinokairos, which you can see over here on the left. This is, again, themed after northern Mongolia. You can see our Dinokairos up on the hill there. And Protoceratops, which would be over on our right. Now, for this park, I've allowed plenty of extra space because I know that the game is going to be adding more dinosaurs, and one that I'm certain we're going to be seeing is going to be Velociraptor, since it's a real A-lister and you would be remiss in not seeing it. So I'm going to be adding onto the park as the new dinosaurs come, as new features come down the line. This is just for me to kind of get my foot wet and test the water, so to speak. By the way, I did just want to take a moment and talk about the ability to scale rocks, because it is so nice being able to scale things. I've been really enjoying scaling these rocks to make these sort of mountain abutments and so on. And it also helps a great deal because when you paint with the terrain tools brush, you can then go in, select the trees, and scale them too. So you can use the same trees that you would have for the actual enclosure to create those kinds of distance effects I was talking about earlier. So coming over here, we have our Argentinosaurus exhibit. This is based on La Reserva Nacional Hualalafaquén. And here you can see I've sunk it down so that guests would be right on eye level with the Argentinosaurus, or pretty near it anyway. And then I've built these mountains in the distance so as to make it flow more effectively from inside the enclosure and outside. Here we got our ground view. You can see that the Argentinosaurus reach almost up to the platform, which again, I was able to scale to get to be the correct size. And I love that I didn't have to worry about building multiple pieces there. One thing that is a bit of a problem now, and I'm sure that the game's going to address it, is that it doesn't qualify it as an enclosure unless the fence goes all the way around, which means that you can't have barrierless enclosures where it's enclosed with rocks or stuff like that. It won't recognize it as an enclosure. But I'm sure that that's something that'll probably be worked on in the future. And it's not really a game breaker anyway, since all the other games like Jurassic World Evolution and so on have to do that too. Here we see our Tyrannosaurus Rex, Triceratops, and Edmontosaurus exhibit. These are all in the Helena Lewis and Clark National Park in northern Montana. You get a good look down here into the exhibit, and this is what I'm saying. The sense of scale with those mountains makes it seem like the enclosure is much bigger than it actually is. In terms of size, it's only about 20,000 square meters, which sounds really big, but for a dinosaur, it really isn't. But you can make it seem bigger than it actually is by using this trompe-l'oeil perspective. Here's our T-Rex enclosure. So heading on over, I've got a couple of gift shops here. There's a T-Rex, and there's also the, whatever the heck the name of the other thing is. I'm sure that we are going to have probably an Oviraptorid of some sort in this game. And I guess that because they have it with a sign that has that exact skull on it. There are several animals that I'm pretty sure are going to be added to the game, including some A-list dinosaurs that haven't been included. like Stegosaurus, Allosaurus, Brontosaurus, Pachycephalosaurus, and so on. Coming over to this enclosure, we have Parasaurolophus, Lambeosaurus, and Styracosaurus, all contained in the Grand Mesa National Forest in Colorado. One of the tricks that is kind of useful in this game, and I know that there's an update coming for different colored rocks, but being able to color match the rocks to match the clay content and stuff that you can put down with terrain tools is actually a pretty interesting challenge as it stands right now, but it is definitely doable. This is our Iguanodon enclosure. This is based off of Tilgate Forest in Sussex, England. And heading on up the ramp here, we're going to be coming into the early Cretaceous section of our park with the Psittacosaurus exhibit right up here at the top of the hill. This is based on China, on the Shandong Chinese region. Here I was experimenting with growing foliage on top of rocks, and I think I did a pretty decent job with it. This is something that I want to work with more in the future. But because you can scale terrain tools inside scenery pieces, you can move little pieces of land up, and then you can put the vegetation on top of that land so it looks like it's growing on top of the rocks. In nature, the way that this works is that dirt lands on top of the rock and then seeds get planted there. Got a good view up here from the top of the Psittacosaurus exhibit. And then we'll be heading downhill again to get to our Echocanthosaurus. Down here at the bottom of the hill is in the Tishomingo Wildlife Refuge in Oklahoma. And that's all of our dinosaurs for right now. So, as I say, I'm going to be building some enclosures for our Jurassic dinosaurs coming up in the future, which we'll take a tour of probably next week. But those are the animals for the Prehistoric Kingdom. My impressions of the game. Obviously, it's not finished. There are some features that we don't have access to, things like the grassland and desert terrain tools, which I'm looking forward to specifically for the Protoceratops and all of that. We have other animals that are going to be coming down the pike, and of course there's no penalty if the animals get out right now because they have no AI aside from sleeping and possibly eating. But I'm loving this game. I'm loving the details. It is absolutely gorgeous. So I would definitely recommend checking it out on Steam if you haven't already. And then will be more Prehistoric Kingdom content coming down the road shortly. But until next time, I have been the Pompkin King, and I will see you later.